What if I told you that the most potent system for mental training was undeveloped in a neuroscience lab or a Silicon Valley startup, but was perfected thousands of years ago in monasteries, in philosophical schools, and by solitary thinkers? What if prayer is the original operating system for the human mind, designed not for supplication, but for forging mental strength, clarity, and an unbreakable inner peace? We live in an age obsessed with optimization. We biohack our bodies, streamline our workflows, and chase productivity hacks, yet our minds remain a chaotic wilderness. We treat the mind as something to be managed with apps and quick fixes, but the ancients understood a deeper truth. The mind is not something to be managed, but something to be trained. It is a muscle that requires deliberate, consistent, and rigorous exercise. Most people today hear the word prayer, and they immediately retreat into one of two camps: religious dogma or secular dismissal. They see it as an artifact of a bygone era, disconnected from the hard logic of modern life. But that is a profound failure of imagination. I spent the first half of my life in that second camp. In the trenches of the tech industry, I believed only in what could be measured, quantified, and leveraged for a competitive edge. My mind was a tool for brute force calculation. Prayer? That was for the weak, the hopeful, the unscientific. It was an inefficient use of valuable time. I built an empire on that mindset, and it nearly cost me everything. The anxiety, the reactive anger, the gnawing emptiness. My success was a glittering facade, and behind it, my inner world was collapsing. My moment of reckoning, a burnout that shattered my health and my most vital business partnership, forced me to look beyond the spreadsheet. It led me back to the Stoics, to thinkers who treated the mind not as a computer, but as a fortress. And in their writings and in the practices of countless other ancient traditions, I discovered the raw, pragmatic power of what they all, in some form, called prayer. They understood that prayer, when stripped of dogma, is a technology for cognitive architecture. It is the blueprint for building an inner citadel. So, the question I want you to wrestle with today is this: are your current beliefs about practices like prayer serving you, or are they simply a cage built from unexamined assumptions? Are you willing to test a tool that has been pressure tested for millennia, or will you dismiss it because of the label it has been given? Let's redefine our terms. When I speak of prayer as mental training, I am asking you to set aside any theological implications for a moment. We are not discussing the entity on the other end of the line. We are focusing entirely on the effect the act of dialing has on the person making the call. At its core, this form of prayer is a structured discipline for directing your attention, regulating your emotions, and reframing your perspective. It is a dedicated practice of internal alignment. Modern neuroscience is only just catching up to this ancient wisdom. When scientists place a meditating monk or a praying nun under a brain scanner, they see the same neural networks light up. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of focus and self-regulation, becomes highly active. The amygdala, our primitive fear and anxiety center, quiets down. It is empirical, repeatable evidence that these practices physically restructure the brain. I once mentored a young, brilliant CEO, a true titan of his industry. But he was being eaten alive by stress. His mind was a pinball machine of worries, projections, and fears. When I first suggested a structured daily practice of what I called directed thought, he was on board. But the moment I used the word prayer, he recoiled. "Cassian," he said, "I don't do woo-woo. I'm an engineer. I build systems that work." I looked at him and said, "Good. Then let's think of this as the most important system you will ever build, the architecture of your own mind. Forget the name. Call it cognitive frameworking or daily mental calibration. The name is the wrapper, the practice is the gift." He agreed to the experiment. We designed a simple 5-minute morning routine. No divine appeals. Just a structured moment to define his primary intention for the day, to contemplate a single obstacle he anticipated without emotional reaction, and to sit in silence, observing his own thoughts without judgment. He treated it like any other business system. He scheduled it, he executed it, he measured the results. Within a month, his team reported he was calmer, more decisive, and less prone to emotional outbursts. He told me, "It's like I'm finally managing my mind, instead of my mind managing me." He had stopped being a reactor and started becoming an architect. This is the essence of what Epictetus meant when he spoke of building the inner citadel. It's not a metaphor, it's a construction project. And these ancient disciplines are the tools. What are the chaotic, unexamined processes currently running your mind? And what would happen if you dedicated just 10 minutes a day to building a more deliberate, more resilient internal structure? Let's examine the first tool in this ancient toolkit, contemplative prayer, which we can understand today as the practice of deep focus or single-pointed meditation. In a world saturated with distraction, the ability to place your full attention on a single point and hold it there is a superpower. Contemplative practice is not about emptying the mind, a common misconception that frustrates beginners. It is about filling the mind with a single, chosen object of focus, a principle, a question, a virtue, and gently returning your attention to it every time it wanders. This is the mental equivalent of a bicep curl. The wandering is not a failure. The return is the repetition that builds the muscle. I remember a time, early in my career, when we were facing a catastrophic bug in a software launch. The entire company's future was on the line. The war room was a storm of panic, shouted suggestions, and frantic energy. My default mode was to match that energy, to work harder, faster, to push through with sheer force of will. For 2 days, we hammered at the problem and got nowhere. We were just creating more chaos. On the third morning, exhausted and defeated, I locked myself in my office. I didn't try to solve the problem. I simply sat, and for 15 minutes, I contemplated a single question. What is the one assumption we are making that is wrong? I didn't brainstorm. I didn't strategize. I just held that single question in my mind. Every time a fear about bankruptcy or failure intruded, I acknowledged it and gently returned to the question. And then, in the quiet, the answer surfaced with stunning clarity. A core assumption about our user data was flawed. It was an insight that could never have been born in the noise of the war room. It required a different state of mind, one of stillness and focused depth. We implemented the fix, and the company was saved. That experience taught me that some problems cannot be solved by a faster processor, they must be solved by a calmer, more focused one. This is what Marcus Aurelius was doing when he wrote his Meditations. He wasn't just journaling, he was engaging in a profound act of contemplation, training his mind to remain fixed on the principles of Stoicism amidst the chaos of ruling an empire. As a practical habit, try this. Block 15 minutes on your calendar for deep work. But instead of working on a task, work on a thought. Pick one strategic challenge or personal virtue you wish to cultivate. For those 15 minutes, that is your entire world. No phone, no email. Just you and the thought. When your mind wanders, and it will, label it thinking and gently guide it back. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you consciously chose what to think about and held that thought for more than 5 uninterrupted minutes? Who is truly in command of your attention? The second discipline, often called intercessory prayer, is one of the most misunderstood. In a secular context, we can reframe this as the practice of radical empathy or perspective training. The traditional idea is to pray for others, for their health, their well-being, their success. The skeptic immediately asks, how does me thinking about someone help them? This question misses the point entirely. The primary transformation in this practice happens not to the person being thought of, but to the person doing the thinking. It is a rigorous training exercise in decentering the ego. It forces you to step outside your own narrow, self-obsessed narrative and inhabit the reality of another human being. It trains you to see the world through a wider, more compassionate lens. This was a lesson I learned through a painful business failure. I had a co-founder, a brilliant man who I thought was my friend. Over time, our relationship soured. I saw him as an obstacle, as someone whose differing opinions were a threat to my vision. Every interaction became a battle of wills, a zero-sum game. Eventually, the friction became too great, and our partnership shattered, costing us a significant opportunity. For years, I held on to the anger, replaying the story of his betrayal. But as I began to rebuild my own internal world, I tried an experiment. Every morning for 5 minutes, I would practice this form of intercession. I would sit and actively try to see the situation from his perspective. I would contemplate his pressures, his fears for his own family, his own ambitions that were just as valid as mine. I didn't do it to forgive him, initially. I did it as a mental exercise. Slowly, something shifted. The emotional charge began to dissipate. I started to see the complexity of the situation, the shades of gray where before I had only seen black and white. The anger was replaced by a kind of sad understanding. The practice didn't change the past, but it radically changed the power the past had over me. It trained the empathy I had let atrophy. This is the practical application of the Stoic concept of sympathia, the profound recognition that we are all interconnected parts of a larger whole. To wish well for another, to truly consider their world, is to strengthen that whole. Here is a practical application for your life. The next time you are heading into a difficult conversation or a tense negotiation, spend 10 minutes beforehand doing this. Don't rehearse your arguments. Instead, contemplate the other person. What are their goals? What pressures are they under? What does a win look like from their side of the table? You are not doing this to concede, you are doing it to understand. This shift in perspective is a strategic advantage that few ever cultivate. So, reflect on this. In your daily interactions, are you engaging with other complete human beings, or are you just colliding with obstacles and instruments related to your own goals? The third discipline is one found in nearly every contemplative tradition on earth: repetitive or mantra-based prayer. In modern psychological terms, we can call this neural pathway reinforcement, or a form of practical cognitive behavioral therapy. Your brain is a creature of habit. The thoughts you repeat most often, whether consciously or unconsciously, carve deep grooves in your neural architecture. These well-worn paths become your default reactions. For many, the unconscious mantra is one of anxiety, scarcity, or victimhood. These are negative affirmations repeated thousands of times a day, reinforcing the very states we wish to escape. Mantra practice is the conscious, deliberate act of carving a new groove. It is the selection of a new thought, a new principle, and using repetition to make it the new default. During my most stressful years in the tech industry, my internal mantra was a constant hum of pressure. Don't screw this up. You have to deliver. Everyone is counting on you. It was a soundtrack of fear. It fueled my work, yes, but it was a toxic, corrosive fuel. My introduction to Stoicism gave me a new set of phrases. One, in particular, resonated. The obstacle is the way. It's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, a reminder that challenges are not impediments to our path, they are the path. I began a simple, almost mechanical practice. Whenever I felt that familiar surge of anxiety before a big meeting or when facing a critical problem, I would pause. I would take a breath and I would repeat, either silently or under my breath, "The obstacle is the way." The first 50 times it felt foolish, a hollow platitude, but I persisted. I treated it like a mental push-up. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the new groove began to form. My initial reaction started to shift. Instead of seeing a problem and feeling the panic of a threat, I began to see it and feel the spark of an opportunity. The repetition wasn't magic, it was neurological. I was consciously overwriting my old, reactive code with a new, more resilient command. Here is how you can apply this immediately. Choose one, just one, limiting belief that governs your life. Maybe it's "I'm not good enough" or "I'm too old to start." Now, find its opposite, an empowering truth. It could be a Stoic maxim like "I control my responses," or something simpler like "I am capable and resourceful." Write it down. Set a recurring alarm on your phone for 3 times a day. When it goes off, stop what you are doing. Close your eyes, take one deep breath, and repeat your new phrase 5 times with intention. This isn't about wishful thinking. This is about systematic retraining of your mind's default settings. So I ask you, what is the unconscious mantra that is currently running your life? And what new command are you willing to begin writing into your code today? The fourth and perhaps most challenging discipline is that of silent prayer, or what we can understand as the practice of present-state awareness. If mantra prayer is about filling the mind with a single focus, silent practice is about allowing the mind to be as it is, without judgment and without attachment. It is the training of the inner observer. It is not about stopping your thoughts. That is impossible. It is about stopping your thoughts from controlling you. It's the ability to sit in the midst of mental noise and recognize that you are not the noise. You are the one who is aware of the noise. This separation is the foundation of all emotional regulation and mental freedom. I can recall with perfect clarity the launch day for a product my company had spent 2 years and millions of dollars developing. The atmosphere in the office was electric with anxiety. Phones were ringing, data streams were pouring in, people were shouting. It was pure chaos. My younger self would have dived headfirst into that chaos, becoming its central node, absorbing and amplifying every scrap of panic. But by this point in my life, I had been practicing. In the heart of the storm, I went into a small, empty conference room. I didn't try to solve anything. I didn't plan my next move. I just sat. I closed my eyes for 3 minutes. I listened to the muffled sounds of panic outside the door. I felt the anxiety pulsing in my own chest, but I did not become it. I simply observed it. There is the sound of shouting. There is the feeling of a rapid heartbeat. By creating that small pocket of silent awareness, I was able to re-enter the war room not as another panicked soldier, but as a calm general. I could see the whole battlefield instead of just the chaos in front of me. The ability to find that internal silence in the midst of external noise was, and is, the single greatest strategic advantage I have ever developed. It is what Seneca spoke of when he urged us to guard our time jealously, for we so often live in the past or the future, but true life exists only in the present moment. Silent practice is the training ground for inhabiting that present moment, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Here is a simple way to begin. Call it the 3-breath pause. Before you react to anything that triggers you, a stressful email, a critical comment, a child's tantrum, stop. Inhale slowly, counting to 4. Hold for a moment. Exhale slowly, counting to 6. Do this 3 times. In those few seconds, you create a space between the stimulus and your response. In that space lies your freedom and your power. It is a moment of profound, practical silence. So, ask yourself this question. Are you truly living your life, or are you a passenger in a mind that is perpetually hijacked by the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow? How often are you truly here, now? Now, let's integrate these principles into a practical, secular protocol. How do you take this ancient technology and apply it starting today, without any need for religious dogma? We will build a simple 7-day experiment. The goal here is not enlightenment, it is data collection. You are a scientist, and your mind is the laboratory. Your only goal is to observe the effects of a new variable. I gave this exact framework to a mentee, a lawyer who was drowning in the adversarial nature of his work. He was cynical, exhausted, and deeply skeptical. He agreed only because his current state was so untenable. Just run the experiment, I told him. Give me 7 days. Here's the protocol I gave him and the one I'm giving you now. Step 1. Define your objective. For these 7 days, choose one single focus for your practice. Don't try to solve everything at once. Your focus could be cultivating gratitude, developing clarity on a specific problem, strengthening your resolve, or simply achieving a state of calm. Write it down. Step 2. Schedule the practice. This is non-negotiable. Put it in your calendar. The same time, the same place, every day. 5 or 10 minutes is all you need to begin. Consistency is infinitely more important than duration. Treat it with the same seriousness as a client meeting or a doctor's appointment. Step 3. Design your structure. Create a simple 3-part routine. Part 1. Intention. Begin by sitting down and stating your chosen objective for the session. For example, for these next 10 minutes, my purpose is to cultivate calm. Part 2. The work. This is where you use one of the tools we've discussed. If your goal is focus, practice contemplation on a single word or question. If your goal is emotional reframing, use a mantra. If your goal is empathy, practice perspective taking. If it is calm, practice silent awareness of your breath. Part 3. Reflection. End with a moment of gratitude or a simple observation. Acknowledge that you completed the practice. For example, I am grateful for this time, or I notice that my mind feels slightly calmer. Step 4. Troubleshoot with logic. Your mind will wander. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the training is working. When your mind wanders, your only job is to notice it without judgment and gently guide it back to your focus. Reframe it. You are not failing at being calm, you are succeeding at noticing you are not calm. That awareness is the victory. If the practice feels awkward or silly, reframe that too. You are not praying, you are performing mental repetitions. You are training your brain. At the end of 7 days, that lawyer called me. He said, "Cassian, I don't know what this stuff is, but for the first time in years, I left a deposition, and I didn't carry the anger with me all day. Something is working." He had the data he needed to continue. Are you willing to be the scientist in your own life? Are you willing to conduct a simple 7-day experiment to see if you can build a better mind? We have journeyed through the landscape of the mind, reframing an ancient practice as a powerful, modern tool for mental fortitude. We've seen that prayer, stripped of its dogma, is a system for developing focus, cultivating empathy, rewriting our neural pathways, and grounding ourselves in the present moment. This is not about faith in an external power. It is about the focused, disciplined application of your own internal power. It is the work of building your inner citadel, brick by brick, thought by thought. The challenge I leave you with is simple. Try the 7-day experiment. Don't just watch this video and nod along. Knowledge is useless without application. True wisdom is forged in the fires of practice. Commit to just 10 minutes a day for 1 week. At the end of that week, come back to the comments section of this video and report your findings. Share what you observed. What was difficult? What shifted? Your experience will not only solidify your own learning, but will serve as a data point for this entire community of practitioners. Let us learn together. I spent decades building an external empire on a foundation of sand, and I saw it all wash away. It was only when I turned inward and began the slow, arduous work of building my internal fortress that I found what could not be shaken by market crashes, by betrayal, or by my own mortality. This is the real work. It is the hardest work, and it is the only work that ultimately matters. It is the transition from being a reactive creature of circumstance to becoming the deliberate, calm, and resilient architect of your own mind. The tools are ancient, battle-tested, and available to you right now. The only remaining question is whether you will choose to pick them up and begin to build. Share your own favorite ancient discipline or mental training routine in the comments below. What practices, secular or spiritual, have you found to be effective in training your mind?